The Lord be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus said to his disciples, I tell you solemnly, it will be hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. Yes, I tell you again, it is easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. When the disciples heard this, they were astonished. Who can be saved then? They said. Jesus gazed at them. For men, he told them, this is impossible. For God, everything is possible. Then Peter spoke. What about us? He said to him, we have left everything and followed you. What are we to have then? Jesus said to him, I tell you solemnly, when all is made new, and the Son of Man sits on his throne of glory, you will yourselves sit on 12 thrones to judge the 12 tribes of Israel. And everyone who has left houses, brothers, sisters, father, mother, children, or land, for the sake of my name, will be repaid 100 times over, and also inherit eternal life. The Gospel of the Lord. In the first reading, we heard from the book of Judges about the story of Gideon. Initially, Gideon felt that he was fighting with his own strength, own power. He did not experience God's power, God's strength was in him to fight against his enemies. But later on, he acknowledged, he experienced God's experience and God's presence in him, and the angel of the Lord gave him power and strength to fight against his enemies. Most of the time, when we have money, power, wealth, we think that with this power I can fight against my enemies or I can win the war. In the history, as we know, according to the 12 sons of Jacob, the 12 tribes of Israel, after the death of King Solomon, the kingdom was divided, north and south. So in the north, there were 10 tribes. In the south, there were 2 tribes. So what happened? The 10 tribes were not faithful to God. They were not faithful to God's command. They did not experience, they did not listen God's command. So they were having alliance with others and they were fighting against their enemies in spite of God's command through prophets. Don't have allies with anybody else. I will fight for you. You don't worry. But the 10 tribes were completely destroyed because of their lack of faith in God, lack of trust in the power of God. Whereas the 2 tribes won and they existed. And through these 2 tribes from Judah, we find Jesus coming out. So this is what today it is happening even in the reality. We think we have military power, we have money power, we have wealth, we have so many nations to fight against the enemies, then we can win the war. Sometimes we will lose. So this is what it has happened in the past, and it is happening even today. Once we fight against our enemies, against the evil things, we must always experience God's presence, God's power, and we must listen to God's command, God's voice in our life. In the gospel reading, we find Jesus is telling to the rich ones, as it is given here, I tell you solemnly, it will be hard for a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And it is easier for a camel to enter into the hole of a needle than a rich man. So Jesus is telling a camel can enter through the eye of a needle than a rich man entering into heaven. So how hard it is now. So it is said, there is a saying, money is the root cause of all evil. So here, there are some good rich people are there, but Jesus is not against the rich people, the rich ones. He's not against riches. But mostly people, once they get power, wealth, money, possessions, everything, they are independent. They never depend on God. So that is the problem. Riches are blessing of God, but not with corruptions, not with injustice. We must accumulate wealth. With justice, with hard work, we can accumulate wealth. But how are we going to use those wealth? Sometimes we are blessed with a lot of riches, a lot of talents, a lot of things. How are we going to make use of those riches, talents? Today, we are able to reach to the moon. We are able to go to the Mars. How many billions and billions of pounds or dollars we are spending to reach to the moon? But the people don't have food, drink, shelter. People are running for life. War is going on. How much money, wealth we are investing on the people? So this is what is happening. So Jesus is telling it is hard for a rich man to enter into the kingdom of heaven. And Peter said, then who can enter? Very nice question. Then Jesus said, and what about, Peter said, what about us? We have followed you. What about us? But Jesus is rewarding. He's telling, because of me, you have followed everything. You have left your father, mother, brothers, sisters, wife, children, even the land. As Abraham left the land, his people. So, because you have left everything, you will be blessed with 100 times over. And you will sit on the thrones of the 12 tribes of Israel to judge the 12 tribes. That means here the 12 tribes means the people of God. You are going to judge. So there is a reward. Once we live for Jesus, live for God, there is a reward. God will reward us. And today we don't see 12 disciples in our eyes, but they are rewarded. They are sitting on the 12 thrones to judge the 12 tribes of Israel, means to judge the 12 and to judge the people of God. So today, still they are existing. That means we think that people, those who are alive, they are living. But we believe in the creed. We believe in the resurrection of the dead. And those who have followed God, followed Jesus, they are not dead. They are there. They are in heaven. That is what God created, the heaven and the earth. So once we finish our life on this earth, we go to heaven. So as we have come here, let us experience God's loving presence. And let us believe in the power of God. Let us not believe in the power of evil things, in the power of money or wealth, possessions. Let us believe in God's power and experience His presence in this Holy Eucharist and receive the eternal life. The eternal life is being with God, filled with love, joy, peace of Christ in our life. May the good Lord bless us all in this Holy Mass.